In June 1941, Nazi Germany launched Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. After suffering catastrophic casualties and surviving hanging in the balance, concepts like gender roles flew out the window, and women were sent to the front lines in ever-growing numbers. As the Wehrmacht continued to drive eastward, they encountered female tank crews, infantry, snipers, and a bomber regiment that taught them to fear the dark. In the Soviet Union, there already was a large pool of female pilots available. Thousands had joined flying clubs before the war, but in spite of their experience, they were kept out of the actual fighting. Even when the Red Army was using women on the front lines, on the ground, the Soviet Air Force still kept women from joining. Two things happened that changed this men-only policy. The first was Marina Raskova, a famous pilot and navigator who held several world records for distance flights, and was a superstar in the Soviet Union. She received hundreds of letters from women begging for the opportunity to be allowed to fight for the Soviet Union from the air. Women were already fighting on the ground, so what was the difference? She passed these on to Joseph Stalin, along with her own pleas to be allowed to fly against the German invaders. The other factor was the casualty reports. Each day, the number of dead and wounded Red Army personnel kept rising, and the Soviet Air Force was badly crippled. In need of anyone who could fly a plane and not send it careening into the ground, Stalin agreed to allow women to join the Red Army Air Force in October 1941. Thousands of women would enlist, and while there were many sent to integrated units, 3 all-female regiments would be founded: the 586th Fighter Aviation Regiment, the 587th Bomber Aviation Regiment, and the 588th Night Bomber Aviation Regiment. All members of these units would be women, including the pilots, the ground crews, and support staff. The women who joined these regiments were mostly university students in their teens to mid-20s and were given years of training in a few months before being sent to the front lines. Since there were no female Red Army pilots, there were no women's uniforms available. So they were given old men's uniforms that didn't fit properly, and many pilots had to cut up fabric to stuff in their boots so they wouldn't slide off their feet. Of the 3 regiments, the most qualified pilots were sent to the 586th Fighter Aviation Regiment. The least qualified were sent to the 588th Night Bomber Regiment. By the time of the Second World War, aircraft technology had advanced by leaps and bounds, and the skies were filled with high-performance machines that have become legendary, like the Supermarine Spitfire, the P-51 Mustang, and the Bf-109. The 588th did not get anything that resembled a high-performance plane. This is the Polikarpov P-02. It's a biplane made from canvas, wood, and wire, and resembled something that flew over no man's land in the First World War. It has room for 2 crew members, a pilot and a bombardier. It was created in the late 1920s as a training aircraft and was also used as a crop duster in peacetime. The P-02's top speed was less than 100 miles or 150 kilometers per hour and had a cruising speed of about 70 miles or about 110 kilometers per hour, and had an operational ceiling or maximum altitude of about 9,800 feet, or a bit under 3,000 meters. Since it was made from canvas and wood, it wasn't the sturdiest of airframes and had a nasty habit of bursting into flame when hit by enemy fire. Cynical pilots gave the P-02 the nickname, the Coffin with Wings. Oh, and the 588th didn't get parachutes until 1944. The bomb load of the P-02 was also minuscule, being around 770 pounds or 350 kilograms. For comparison, a contemporary ground-attack aircraft, the P-47 Thunderbolt, could carry about 3,000 pounds or 1,300 kilograms of bombs. To be effective, the crews would have to make several missions, exposing themselves to enemy fire each time. If all of this wasn't enough, the planes didn't have radios, so communication with other members of the squadron was all but impossible, and radioing for help was out of the question. Being cut off like that, not knowing where your allies are or if there's danger around the corner, left them incredibly exposed. It's a level of vulnerability that weirdly enough still exists today, not on the battlefield, but online. That's where today's sponsor, Private Internet Access, comes in. A VPN protects your internet connection by encrypting your data and hiding your IP address. Without one, it's like flying a mission with your coordinates lit up for anyone to see. Hackers, internet providers, and even government censors. Private Internet Access works quietly in the background, keeping you hidden while you move through the digital world. It also lets you access region-locked content by choosing from servers in 91 countries and all 50 US states. You can protect every device you own with one subscription, and they've got a no-logs policy that's been proven in court and confirmed by third-party audits. So even they don't know what you're doing online. Right now, PIA is offering an exclusive 83% off, making it just $2.03 a month, and you get 4 extra months for free. There's even a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk in trying it out. Check out our link in the description below to get the deal. Still, they had to make do with what was given to them, and the disadvantages of the PO2 were turning into their advantage. It didn't need a long runway, so any decently sized open field would work, which meant they could deploy close to the front lines. Their slow speed and low altitude was also an advantage. Its max speed was slower than the stall speed of many other planes, so shooting them down was surprisingly difficult. With all this in mind, the women of the 588th used a unique set of tactics to terrorize the Germans. Normally, it would make sense to fly as fast as possible, deliver their payload, and then fly away as fast as possible, minimizing their time in the enemy's field of fire. They did the exact opposite. They would patrol near German lines, and when a target was spotted, they would fly towards it, keeping low over the treetops in groups of 3. When they got close enough to be heard, they would split apart and attack from separate directions, dividing the Germans' attention. They would then turn off their engines and glide their way in. Once over the target, the bombardier would release their bombs, and then the pilot would turn the engine back on, hopefully without stalling, and they would fly away into the night undetected. There is some debate about where the 588th's nickname came from. One possibility is that the sound of air rushing through flapping canvas and wire wings sounded like a witch's broom, while others say that it was given by the Germans as an insult after they found out they had just been bombed by an all-female bomber squadron. Either way, the Germans began calling them the Nachthexen, or Night Witches. It was meant to be derogatory, but the women took it as a compliment and started calling themselves that. Eventually, the name became associated with all-female Soviet pilots, regardless of the unit. From their first mission on June 28, 1942, until the end of the war, the Night Witches made life hell for the Germans. The 261 women who served in the unit dropped 26,000 incendiary devices and about 3,000 tons of bombs, flying 23,600 sorties. Because their payloads were small and they were located so close to the front, they could fly up to 18 missions per night, each mission lasting 30 to 50 minutes. The Germans tried to rationalize the witches' effectiveness, believing that they were given special injections that helped them see in the dark. This obviously wasn't true, and they were probably just bitter that they lost 9 railways, 2 railway stations, 17 river crossings, 12 fuel depots, 26 warehouses, 11 searchlights, 18 fixed positions, and 176 armored vehicles. Of the 95 women who won the Hero of the Soviet Union, the highest award in the Soviet military, 23 were given to members of the 588th. All of this came at a cost, though. Over the course of the war, 32 Night Witches were killed and 28 planes were lost. Overall, though, how effective was the 588th? Now, in strict military terms, the damage they inflicted was superficial. At most, there were about 80 or so serving at any given time, a small drop in the bucket in a war that saw millions deployed. Their greatest contribution, however, was psychological. At any moment, a German soldier could be struck by a surprise raid, their only warning being the soft rustling of wind through the wire and canvas frame of the Night Witch's aircraft. This would cause a loss of sleep, which, as anyone who's pulled an all-nighter can agree, greatly reduced their concentration and capabilities. Not a great state to be in on a battlefield. The Night Witches also made the Germans a bit paranoid. They would live in constant fear that at any moment, death would rain on them from unseen and unheard enemies, and they would start jumping at shadows, fearing the Night Witches when they weren't even there. The toll they took on the Germans' mental health cannot be accurately measured, but there's no doubt that the Night Witches added another terror for them to face. The Night Witches would be disbanded in October of 1945. As a final irony, they were not allowed to participate in the victory parade in Moscow at the end of the war. The reason? Their planes were too slow to keep up with the others. Thanks again to Private Internet Access for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to check out the link in the description to claim your 83% discount and 4 extra months free. Your digital privacy deserves a fighting chance.